What happens when a child cries for help and nobody listens? Like when the people who should be protecting them just look the other way. That's what we're going to be looking at today. This Solomon family case, Angie, Grant, and Gracie. It's really unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. You've got abuse allegations, manipulation, a death that just doesn't sit right, and everyone's saying something different. It's a real mess.
Absolutely. And the stuff you sent over, wow. Legal documents, news articles, even personal accounts, it's a lot. And it's not looking good. So maybe we could start with Angie and Aaron, their relationship. You mentioned they had a really fast romance, shotgun wedding. Angie was actually planning on raising Grant alone at first, right?
Right. And a lot of the sources, especially from Angie's side, talk about how the power dynamic was off from the beginning. I mean, she was already successful, a businesswoman, but she still felt pressured into the marriage?
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like that pressure didn't let up. You pointed at times where Angie says Aaron got more and more controlling, even accusing him of cheating and some really disturbing things, grooming young girls, being involved with sex workers.
Yeah, and those are serious accusations. But you know what's interesting? Some of the other stuff you gave me backs that up. Like that article about Aaron suddenly leaving his job. He was a big shot sports anchor and then going into finance. That lines up with when Angie says his behavior got really bad.
So we're already seeing some red flags here. Then we have Gracie, only 5 years old, and she tells Angie about the abuse. What got me was that detail about Aaron always wanting to bathe her and how Gracie became terrified of bath time.
Right, and that's important. It fits a pattern of manipulation, maybe grooming. You highlighted a psychologist who talked about this kind of abuse, where the abuser uses normal, everyday stuff to control the child, to get to them.
It's scary how subtle it can be. So Angie confronts Aaron about Gracie, and according to her, he admitted it, the abuse, but then threatened to take the kids if she told anyone. This seems like when things really went downhill. Then there's that awful incident where Aaron apparently tries to strangle Angie with a hairdryer cord,
Right.
and Grant, their son, has to step in.
That's a big one. It shows the violence getting worse. There's a police report, and you included the 911 call Aaron made, but listening to it, it's weird. He's so calm, collected, like he's trying to spin the story.
It's chilling. Then Angie's hospitalized, and people are saying different things about her mental state. Some say Aaron used this to make her look unstable, while others point to Angie's own records of the abuse, how desperately she tried to get help.
Yeah, and we have to remember we're dealing with different viewpoints, possible biases in these sources. But what's obvious is there's a fight over who's telling the truth, Angie and Aaron both trying to control the story.
And then, in the middle of all this, Aaron disappears with the kids. Angie's searching frantically. The police don't seem to be doing much even with a restraining order. It just adds another layer of crazy to this whole thing.
And that's where the custody battle really kicks off. Some of the legal documents you sent, they show a huge difference in the lawyers. Aaron, with his finance money, he's got these high-powered guys, while Angie's struggling to figure out the system. So Aaron gets full custody. Angie gets these limited supervised visits.
Awful. And during those visits, Angie sees signs that the kids might be neglected. Grant's lost a lot of weight. Gracie seems exhausted. But even with her concerns and a psych evaluation ordered by the court that says she's a fit parent, Aaron keeps custody.
It's frustrating, and it shows how hard it is to fight a custody order. Angie's journals, they're full of despair. She's so scared for her children, and it just breaks your heart. Angie really felt like the system was failing her, prioritizing Aaron's rights over her kid's safety. It's all there in the sources.
It's awful. And then it gets even worse. Grant, just 18 years old, dies in this freak accident, his own truck. And Aaron, he's the only one there. You shared that 911 call, and even now, something about it just seems wrong.
It's like you said, the tone, how he's talking, what he focuses on, it clashes with the evidence at the scene. Something's not adding up.
Right. The police report says the truck was barely damaged, but Grant's injuries, they were fatal. And his glasses, where they were found, a bloody rock nearby, none of it fits with what Aaron told the police.
And don't forget, Grant had just turned 18. He wasn't under Aaron's control anymore, legally an adult. Some sources suggest that maybe Aaron was threatened by that, by Grant's independence, maybe worried Grant would talk about the abuse.
It's a disturbing thought for sure. And then there's the fact that Aaron got rid of the truck, scrapped it right after, even though there was hardly any damage. Why do that unless you're hiding something?
Yeah, destroying evidence, that's always suspicious. It makes you wonder why the police didn't look into that more. That private investigator Angie hired, you shared his report. He thought it was fishy how quickly that truck was gone.
And Angie, she managed to get some parts of the truck before it was totally destroyed, had them analyzed independently. We don't have all the results, But the investigators report, it says the damage inside the truck, it doesn't match up with Aaron's story.
So there's definitely more to this than what's been officially reported. The fact that these inconsistencies haven't been fully investigated, that's a big issue here.
Then there's this whole Grace Chapel Church thing. Those articles you highlighted, they talk about how influential that church was. And Aaron, he was a member, right? Along with some big names in the legal system, even the judge in the custody case.
Yeah, that shared religious connection, it's definitely something to think about. Could it have influenced the legal decisions, maybe created some bias in Aaron's favor? It's a valid question.
It's like this whole case is tangled up in power and conflicts of interest. And it's not just the courts. Gracie's school, too, they supposedly told her not to talk about the abuse, said it would ruin her reputation.
Trying to silence her, classic tactic. Sadly, it shows how institutions sometimes care more about their image than protecting the people they're supposed to be looking after.
And you included that video, the one Angie took, of Aaron confronting Gracie in a doctor's parking lot. He's trying to force her to go with him, and she's clearly scared, upset. It's hard to watch.
That video, it really shows the emotional abuse Gracie talks about, how Aaron controlled her. It's right there, the power imbalance, his manipulation.
It's infuriating, all this evidence, and still, the courts, the people in power, they keep siding with Aaron. It makes you wonder who these systems are really meant to protect. So we've got this pattern of abuse, of silencing, and Angie keeps trying to get help, but it's like hitting a wall every time.
Exactly. And it shows how even when you do what you're supposed to, the system can still let you down. It's a tough reality.
And then Gracie, she's only 14, but she decides to do something about it herself. You sent that link, her YouTube video, where she talks about everything, the abuse, and even accuses Aaron of maybe killing Grant. It's brave.
That video changed everything. It put the Solomon case in the spotlight. People started paying attention, asking questions.
Yeah, it had a huge impact. And then, boom, Gracie's taken away, put in DCF custody, the Child Protection Agency. It seemed odd, especially since she wanted to be with her mom.
It did raise some eyebrows. Some child welfare people, they saw it as punishing Gracie for speaking out. A few experts you mentioned, they said putting her in state custody when her mom was there, ready to care for her, could actually make the trauma worse.
It's hard to understand the logic there. Then, of course, Aaron comes back swinging with a defamation lawsuit, saying Angie and Gracie and some of their supporters are lying, trying to extort him, ruin his name.
Classic move when you're accused of something like this. Silence the accusers, change the story. And it can work, especially against people who are already struggling.
But Angie and Gracie, they had people on their side, fighting back against the lawsuit, pointing out all the holes in Aaron's story. He dropped the suit eventually, but there was talk he might refile it, go federal.
That whole thing, it really shows how tough it is for abuse survivors to get justice. It's often them against the world, limited resources, going up against people and systems that are protecting themselves.
Yeah, speaking up comes with a price. But Gracie and Angie, they didn't back down. They started that Freedom for Gracie movement, fighting for Grant, raising awareness about abuse and how the system fails kids.
It's a powerful movement. It's not just their story anymore. It's a voice for other survivors who've been silenced, ignored.
They're also raising money for Gracie's legal fights and to help other families in similar situations. It's pretty amazing how they're turning all that pain into something positive.
And it's gotten people talking about the need to change how we handle child welfare. The Solomon case, it's a reminder that we have to believe survivors, hold abusers accountable, and fix the system that often protects those in power.
So where are we now? The case is still going. The fight's not over. This has been a heavy, deep dive, but it's important, to face these things. We all need to be more aware, listen when people ask for help, and challenge the systems that allow abuse and silence to continue.
You've given us a lot to think about. Justice isn't always easy, but we have to keep pursuing it. The story, it makes us look at ourselves, how we can create a society that truly protects the vulnerable.
If you've been touched by this case, please go to the Freedom for Gracie website. Find out more, support their cause, and most importantly, keep talking about it. Silence only helps abusers. When we speak up, share these stories, demand better, that's when we can make a real difference. A world where every child is safe, heard, and believed.